All right, guys. My name is Garrett McLaughlin. Very thankful to have you here on this Thursday evening. I know there's a lot of other places you could be, but happy to have you here on the webinar. We're going to have a small group this evening. So make sure as we get through this, ask as many questions as you want. Anything you're unsure of, want to give your firsthand experience, welcome to click that Q&A button on the bottom of the screen and drop me a line so we can kind of chat about that as we get through the webinar. So goal of this webinar today, help you turn your body into a resilient and successful running machine. The strength training side of running from injury prevention, from a running performance standpoint, is very important. We see the injury rates being extremely high for runners. So hopefully with this webinar today, I can help you understand a little bit more about the physiology of running, right? What impact the running has on the body and why core training matters. We're going to look at the core from a wider lens. A lot of times we think of abdominals, right? Sit-ups, crunches, planks, in those areas. The core is a much bigger, all-encompassing area, which we'll talk about in a second. So hopefully expand your thinking on that. And then, of course, we'll cover some specific exercises that will help you really, truly impact your running performance. At the very end of the webinar this evening, and like I always like to do with my webinars, I'm going to enter names into the raffle for 1 month in the Healthy Running Program. This is my biggest and most popular program. Help runners from an injury standpoint, from a performance standpoint, just get an idea in running form, running coaching, all of those things. You need to be on the webinar at the very end to actually enter your name. So make sure you stick around or maybe jump back on at the right time so you can enter your name into that raffle. Good value in that. The program itself is $3.99. I'm gonna obviously raffle that off for one person for free and then provide a good discount for some of you if you need help with your running at this time. But hopefully I can provide as much value on the webinar where you can take some of these strategies, some of these exercises, and begin incorporating them in your routine starting tomorrow. So before we begin, do me a favor, silence any technology you have around you, telephones, TVs, anything like that. I really want to make sure you get the most value from the webinar this evening. We're going to cover some specific details that you kind of need to pay attention to really grasp fully. Grab a pen and paper if you can. As we go through, there are going to be specific things. Light bulb will go on, some aha moments. So I want to make sure you can write down a few of those things. So once you leave here this evening and even tomorrow morning, you know exactly what you need to do and what to incorporate moving forward, because I want to make sure more than just you sitting here with me on a Thursday evening, I want to make sure you take action from this material today. There's really no benefits, right? We can learn things and we can expand our knowledge, but as runners, we want to make sure we're incorporating these things on a regular basis to actually see better and more tangible results with our running. And that's what I want for you here moving forward. A little bit about me before we start. I was actually born and raised just outside of Boston. Actually, I met with a guy today here in Milwaukee. So I've only been here for 2 weeks. He said he's met a few people from Boston recently who have, he says, lost their Boston accent. But I've been in so many different places over the years. School in Connecticut, did my master's and lived down in Miami for a few years, moved up to Ann Arbor, Michigan, moved down to Nashville, moved back up to Michigan, and then we made our way over to Milwaukee, which will be here for a quite a long time. So I'm in the River West area. We're looking for houses and definitely enjoying it the first 2 weeks here. So pretty new to Milwaukee, but I'm enjoying it. My background is in athletic training, sports medicine, and I did a master's in exercise physiology. So now with, like, you hear about the Healthy Running Program, I try to combine all of these areas together into one cohesive program. What I see and what I've seen over the years is we have physical therapy, we have strength training, we have nutrition, we have Pilates, we have running coach, right? We have all these different pieces and we need to do a good job as runners to put them all together at the right time to see good results. So what I did with my background is help merge a lot of those different areas together into one program. So it's almost a one-stop shop for runners. I find it helps simplify things. It's more cost-effective than adding all of these components at the same time. You can have them within one simple program. And that's where I've created that Healthy Running Program years ago while I was in Nashville. Throughout my entire life, I've been pretty active in a whole range of sports growing up, from running, hockey, soccer, baseball, lacrosse, basketball. The benefit of that is when you're active and bouncing from one sport to the next, get to experience injuries. I think that's something, and especially from a running standpoint, later on, we start to deal with these aches and pains and niggles and things. So these injuries have helped me really get to where I am today. Really wanted to pursue that sports medicine side of of training, and then combine strength training, injury prevention, put all those pieces together to help people. I think runners need a good support system. The injury rates are so high, which we'll talk about in a second. So we need to make sure we're doing the right things. We're interacting with the right professionals to make sure we're keeping our bodies healthy long-term. In 2016, while I was in Nashville, that's when I started the Healthy Running Program. It's been my absolute favorite program. I keep refining it and trying to make it better over the years. We have different 6-week challenges. We have one-on-one coaching, probably opening up some small group training and those kinds of things. But really just that one-stop shop for runners to get everything they need, whether it's from pain to performance. So yeah, it's my passion, like I mentioned, passion to help runners achieve a wide range of goals, from things like eliminating pain, return to running, improving running form, right? Running more efficiently so we can therefore run faster, run longer, and see better results. And then that long-term injury prevention piece, which is super important from a running standpoint. 70% of injured runners get injured each and every year. So we really need to focus on doing those little things on a regular basis. Within the program, we do things like orthopedic evaluations and movement screenings, understand how well you move and what we need to improve, weaknesses and balances, those kinds of things. Slow motion running analysis, soft tissue manual therapy, active release techniques, joint mobilizations, those kinds of things, running coaching and running form correction. And then obviously your strength training and injury prevention. So when it comes to core training for runners, why this topic might matter to you, and I say this often just to get through to people, 70% of runners are injured each and every year. If it's not you, it's someone you know, or multiple people within your inner circle there. So we cannot eliminate these injuries from happening altogether, right? Injuries are going to happen. There's too many variables we have to control within the equation to stay completely injury free. But we need to do a better job of developing these, what I call mitigation strategies, right? What plan, what does our system look like to help keep us as healthy as possible for as long as possible? Doesn't necessarily mean that's strength training for you. It could be proper nutrition, sleep, and recovery. It could be soft tissue work. It could be a good running plan. There's a lot of different ways you can help mitigate your risk of injury. I tend to really try to push the strength training injury prevention piece because I think as much as we want to be better runners, we also want to function and move well later in life. My biggest goal is when I'm 70, 80, 90 years old, I hopefully still want to be running. I want to be active. I want to be interacting with my grandkids and going hiking and getting on boats and doing things around the lake, right? So I like to look at things from more of a long-term like sustainability standpoint. And that's where I think strength training and injury prevention type training can really be helpful. So we want to have an effective and efficient routine in place so we can get more results in less time. I don't want you to spend 4 or 5 hours in the gym. I want you to spend as little time as possible with the core training, with the strength training that actually delivers results. I was talking to a woman today. She's doing 3 days per week. I'll talk with a woman tomorrow. She does one single 30-minute session, right? We start to figure out what people need, what they have time for within the routine to create the most efficient plan possible. So by no means am I trying to push on you guys. You need to get in the gym every single day. Do as little as possible, and people usually laugh when I say this, do as little as possible to see result. If you enjoy it, feel free to do more, but obviously you want to spend your time actually out there running and seeing results in that way. What I envision for you moving forward, and hopefully you receive this as a result of the webinar today, I want you to make more informed decisions to better serve your body and running long term. Like I mentioned, my goal, be able to run, be active, still 70, 80, 90 years old. So using these things not to necessarily get the best results right now, we want to slowly progress our program, make changes over time so we continue to improve as individuals. And become a movement ninja, right? We want to be strong, want to be agile and flexible and powerful. We want all of these different characteristics to really just move in a nice, healthy way, because we want to hopefully avoid that run, injury, physical therapy cycle. That's the most common cycle when it comes to runners. We're always going through that, right? You're running, you're suffering from an injury, you're going through physical therapy, you're cleared to run again, you run again. You go through that cycle again. It's so common. So my goal really is to disrupt that cycle as much as possible so we can hopefully ward off and fight off that physical therapy side of things because we're more proactive with some of these preventative strategies. And then obviously with our topic today, create a core training plan that actually delivers results. I don't want you to sit there doing things that aren't going to actually help you move closer to your end goal. I want you to do things that are in alignment with your goals, that allow you to see results and run as best as you can for years to come. And then with this, whether it's an occasional email, whether you need to work with me directly, I'm here as a resource for you to help keep you accountable and hopefully help you achieve those biggest health, fitness, and running goals. So question for you guys, I told you some interaction in here today. Click that Q&A and the Q&A button on the bottom of the screen. Let me know what are the maybe one or two things, the most important things that brought you to this webinar today. Every time I have the registration up, I always get these very basic things, running form, core strength, injury prevention. But why are you here actually listening to this webinar today? What do you think improving your core training routine can help provide you as a runner? So take a second, click that Q&A button. Let's get some feedback from you guys. I like to use this feedback as we go through the webinar today, just to make sure we can fine tune things a little bit more specifically. So let's see. Okay, first one here, history of lower back pain. So obviously core training can be super important there, building core strength, core stabilization, but obviously if you're getting that as your run, that's pretty uncomfortable. Let's see. Just be more effective with my training, do strength training now, but not sure if I'm doing the right exercises. Okay, that's good. So hopefully we can incorporate or show you some exercises today to be more effective and efficient with your time. Want to improve running performance. Good. So I think, yeah, from a performance standpoint, super important. And we'll kind of dig into that a little bit more specifically in a second. I have 2 hip replacements. I still want to try to qualify for Kona. Awesome. It's funny. I just went out to, I have a client out in, she's in Kona actually. I went and visited her in August, went out there, did an evaluation, running analysis, all of that. She's training for I think it's the Honolulu Marathon coming up in December is that, but we had a phone call this morning. Actually, she was saying everyone was arriving in Kona right now, and things are starting to pick up down there. So 2 hip replacements, definitely with the core training. And we're going to talk about core, hip, how all of these areas are tied together. And I think you should have some really good exercises to address the hip. So this should be beneficial to you as well. So as we get into the content here, I want to talk about understanding the demands of running. Running is a single leg, plyometric-like, right, multi-joint activity. So a lot of times with the core training programs, I see people working areas in isolation. That's okay to a degree. We still want strong abs and strong obliques and all of that, but the body works together in such a multi-joint approach. So we need to make sure we're doing things that are tying together the foot, the knee, the hip, the core, the spine, all of these areas together with the exercises. So we're going to expand on beyond just the core to talk about how other areas impact the core today as well. As you land, your body actually experiences 2 to 6 times your body weight during foot strike. So we need to make sure we're strong, we're resilient, we're stable. If you're landing with that much force into the ground and we're unstable, we're not strong through the midsection, that's when we start to break down to a degree. Stabilization, and as you'll hear me say multiple times throughout the webinar, stabilization and alignment are really some of the most important things we want to focus on. We want to be in the best position possible as we land, strike the ground, and then go to push off, so we can really maximize our running form and our efficiency of our mechanics. And then one of the big things is centration around the rib cage, spine, and pelvis. So I'll show you some pictures of this in a second. Stabilization, stability of the core is the most important when it comes to runs. We don't actually need the strongest core possible. We want to be stable around the midsection area because that helps us move in a more efficient manner. Let's see. Okay, just making sure I clear things out here. So these are some things you'll see, right? It's not always an issue until it's an issue. So I don't always believe everything is bad. Things are bad when they start creating pain or poor performance. So these are some typical breakdowns you'll see where good core training can really come in and improve. So we see that overpronation of the foot and the ankle there on the left side of the screen, right? A lot of people fall into that and they see that instability in the foot. Also needs to be addressed up from the core and the hip as well, because all of these areas are connected together. Middle picture here, we have what's called contralateral pelvic drop. So this person's landing, striking the ground on her left leg. That right side pelvis is dropping to a great extent. The pelvis still should drop because that's how we absorb force as we strike the ground. We want to make sure it doesn't happen too much. And in this position, that's too much. So this is something we address from a single leg stability and core standpoint. We can see the runner on the right side, very overextended, right? Back is arched, hips extending, losing that centrated position of the rib cage being perfectly stacked over the pelvis. So, and this lady probably looks like a high level runner. So you'll see these things in beginner runners, elite runners, and people across the board. But we obviously want to improve them as much as possible. So if we can improve efficiency of our mechanics, we can hopefully run longer while using less energy, right? That's the key to good running. So then we can hopefully run faster and run longer, see better results, reduce the likelihood of injury. All those things come together there at the right time. Now, if we start from the bottom and work up, we're just going to touch on the foot. We're going to touch on breathing, and we're going to touch on the core. The foot, to me, is one of the most overlooked areas when it comes to running, injury prevention, running performance. We focus so much on the hips and core. I know, yeah, that's the topic of the webinar this evening, but we need to really focus on the foot, how that foot is stabilizing and contacting the ground. This is the base of support that accommodates the ground. Too often now, we're throwing our feet in these thick running shoes with high drop, and we're losing that connection of the foot in the ground. By no means am I saying go out and run barefoot. I think this is something we tend to swing in extremes, right? Going from these thick shoes to then, oh yeah, someone told me I need to try barefoot running. We need these small gradual changes over time to really work on strengthening the foot, strengthening the body so we don't actually cause injuries. So that's why from a foot standpoint, I tell a lot of my runners, when they do their strength training or if they're around the house, get out of the shoes, walk around the yard, do your strength training exercises, teach that foot to connect with the ground so it doesn't always have this disconnect of some type of thick sole between it and the floor. The foot does require flexibility and rigidity. So we want to be able to roll through the foot, the ankle, the subtalar joint, the toes, to be able to move into those areas, but also really stiffen those up, create stability so we can push off. The foot should be this rigid lever that we can push off and be powerful from. And obviously pushing 2 to 6 times your body weight is a lot of power that we need to develop in that foot. So stabilization is super important in the foot. I showed you a second ago, right? The left side here, instability in the foot. So this foot has an either not enough stiffness, too much flexibility, but it's unable to get rigid at the right time to really support and stabilize. So that person's rolling into the arch. That's a less efficient way to run. This right here is the foot tripod, or some people actually call it the foot core. 3 points of contact at the base of the first toe, the base of the heel, and the base of the fifth toe. We want to make sure as we're doing some of these strength training, core training exercises, as you'll see, and as I say that right now, a lot of these are actually upright as opposed to on the floor, which people traditionally think. We want to really connect to these 3 points of contact because when it comes to the foot collapsing in and overpronating, or the pelvis dropping, knee caving in, any of those instability type things we see, the foot, the hip, and the pelvis all work together in a nice way to really work on stabilizing the kinetic chain. There's so much going on here, right? So when we talk about the foot core, all of these joints in the foot, all of these small intrinsic muscles have to work together to stabilize. Very similar to the core, right? The core, we have the diaphragm, we have the psoas, pelvic floor, abdominals, obliques, quadratus lumborum. There's a ton of muscles and things that need to work together to make sure we create proper stability. And these are some of the things you'll see in the foot. Now, from a core standpoint, what actually is the core? The core, AKA the lumbopelvic hip complex, is every muscle and joint that attaches to the hips, the pelvis, the spine, and the rib cage. So if we expand our thinking to all of those areas, we realize it's so many things. It's funny, years ago when I was in, when I was in Kalamazoo years ago, back in, I think it was 2013, I worked with a women's support group, and they were training for different races, triathlons, and those things. And I used to go and meet them on a weekly basis and run them through like a strength training injury prevention routine. And the lady she named it hips to nips, is what she named it, because talking about like as we train our core, it's actually this huge area, right? It's a lot bigger than we think it is. So I thought that was pretty funny. That's something that's stuck with me throughout the years. But you can see all the muscles involved here. Everything you see and that's labeled in that image is a part of the core. So we're not just thinking solely abdominals. That's one piece of it. It's a lot of these other muscles as well. And as we get down to some of these deeper layers, right, we have our diaphragm, which is one of our biggest breathing muscles. We have our pelvic floor, which almost mirrors that diaphragm. Psoas, quadratus lumborum, piriformis, some of those other hip muscles. These are all core muscles. They're attaching to the rib cage, the spine, the pelvis, or the hip. Earlier, I mentioned we want centration. And I said a second ago, diaphragm over pelvic floor. If you look at the images here, we can see just different curvature through the spine. So people that have different posture have different relationships on how well they're actually stabilizing the core. Are they stabilizing effectively or ineffectively? Ideally, our goal would be, and with a lot of the core training exercises you'll see today, we want to get the rib cage to be over the pelvis. So we don't want to be overextended. We don't want to be hyper flexed. We want to be in a position where that rib cage is sitting over the pelvis. That's where diaphragm, pelvic floor, all of these core stabilizers can work together. It's almost like we're creating this, you can see it here, we're creating this cylinder through the core, and that's that green shape there in the middle. So doing as best we can to not just strengthen these muscles, to put ourselves in the best position possible, because that's how we create efficient movement. Okay, one second. So the purposes of the core, beyond just to be strong, to run fast, respiration, right? The core helps us breathe. It helps us create movement. If we move in different ways around the spine, hips, and pelvis, it also helps us prevent movement. This is very important. That's where stabilization comes in. Using these muscles to prevent us from being pushed over, to lose our position, to be over rotated and out of position. And then also storage and release of energy. So as we run, opposite arm, opposite leg are moving together in a very coordinated fashion. We're transferring energy throughout the kinetic chain. So if we are not stable and in the right position, we're unable to use nice fluid movement to run in an efficient manner. So what's the big deal about stabilization? This is a client of mine, Christina, who came in here with, remember the session, purple hair, but she's a former collegiate runner. I thought she was good to show, but we're working on some stability stuff for her as well, overcoming an injury, coming back and progressing back to some races. So stabilization helps to optimize position of the foot, the lower limb, and the trunk, right? To be in the best position possible to run effectively, to absorb and dissipate force. 2 to 6 times your body weight comes down on a single leg every time you strike the ground. So if I think about myself and I just do a quick, you can probably work backwards on this too and figure out exactly. On the high end, we're talking about 1,100, right, pounds of force coming down on that leg. On the short end, maybe 400 or so, right? So we need to make sure as we land with that much force, we're in the best position to absorb and dissipate the force, so we're not overloading certain areas of the body. Whereas the foot, the ankle, could be the knee, the hip, the lower back, right? All of those areas have to withstand a lot of force. Like I said a second ago, transferring opposite arm, opposite leg, transfer of energy throughout the kinetic chain. Only way we transfer energy from the lower body to the upper body is directly through the core in the midsection. So we need that stability there to really do that effectively. And all of this together helps create nice, efficient movement. One of my favorite quotes, this one says Charles Pollock, but I'm not sure where I heard it originally, but you can't fire a cannon from a canoe, right? If we just think about that and visualize that, we have a canoe sitting in the middle of the lake, right out here in Lake Michigan. We have a cannon strapped down to the canoe. We're trying to, who knows, shoot the enemy as they come across or whatever it is. If you fire that cannon from the canoe and that cannon is just out there floating in the lake, there's going to be no support. There's no stability. There's nothing holding that canoe down to provide that support that it can actually create good power with the cannonball. So a lot of times what we miss with our training is we're creating strength in so many different areas of the body, strong glutes, strong quads, strong hamstrings, strong calves. But without stability of the midsection, stability of the foot, it's like we're trying to fire a cannon from a canoe. So we need to develop that stability. We need to get this canoe. We need to tie it down. Let's tie it down to the dock. Let's put some anchors down to the bottom. Let's really hold it in place. So as we fire that cannonball, we have that base of support that we can create some power, some explosiveness up too. So this is just not from a performance standpoint, but also from an injury prevention standpoint, because if we don't have that stability coming from somewhere, we're going to be more inefficient as we move, and tissues tend to break down like that. Now, as we get into how do we actually address some of these things, I wanted to start with the foot first. We'll go to the foot. We'll talk about a very good breathing sequence, and then put all of that together into specific core exercises. These 3 drills I think are the staples when it comes to the foot. So I hope you guys are doing something for the foot. This is one of the big areas that I always evaluate my runners. We look at toe range of motion, we look at foot strength, we look at ankle range of motion, we look at how well can people splay their toes. Can we do toe yoga of moving the toes in opposite direction? All of these things are super important because it does tie into the hip, the pelvis, and the core up the chain. So at the top left here, this one is important because we're looking at trying to teach the foot how to splay. A lot of times, like I mentioned earlier, we're sticking our foot in these shoes, yes, with a lot of cushion. They're really built up off the ground. They have a heel to toe drop, but a lot of times those shoes tend to be a little bit narrow and restricting. So whether you're wearing running shoes, whether you're wearing some type of shoe during the day, that's snug or that's pulling those toes inward, we want to really work on abduction of that big toe. Can we get that big toe to separate from the small toes? Because if we can separate that, we stretch out this transverse metatarsal ligament. We get more stability and with how we're actually contacting the ground in the shoe. This helps from a stability standpoint at the core as well. If we're only focusing on the core is being stable, but the foot is unstable or the hip is unstable, right? All these things need to work together. So that's why I show some of these things in other areas. This one, hopefully you can see that I got a little bar up on my screen. I hope it's not blocking you. And if something's blocking you here, it's because I have a little toolbar up on my screen, and sometimes it's fuzzy on your end. Let me know. This one here is isometric toe abduction. So as much as we want to get that toe to separate, we want to strengthen those muscles in the inner arch that helps you be strong and stable in your foot. The stronger and more stable you can be in the foot and in the arch specifically, we can prevent that overpronation in the foot that we saw earlier. We can prevent that knee from collapsing in. We can prevent that stress on the lateral hip joint, stress on the core and the pelvis. So these little exercises, although they seem like, I don't need that, are very important because they have a huge impact up the kinetic chain as we talk about the core in a second. Next one here, lift, spread, reach. This is just a simple toe dexterity exercise. I'm trying to extend the toes off the ground, spread them as wide as possible, and then lay them back down and create a wider foot. Just a simple but very challenging drill to work on doing it actively. I usually have a lot of people do it passively first. They're actually kneeling down, they're separating their toes, they're putting it down and then pressing firmly into the ground. It takes some time to actually become good at this. So try this for a second as you sit there, see how well you do it. I think you'll be surprised. We do so much with our hands on a regular basis that we have very poor dexterity with our feet. So definitely some things to try on a regular basis, and we'll kind of tie that into the core section in a second. From a breathing standpoint, one thing I think was very important that I learned years ago was if you cannot breathe as you perform an exercise, most likely that exercise is too challenging for you. So I see a lot of people straining, holding their breath, unable to breathe, turning red in the face, doing things that are really hard to challenge themselves, but unfortunately are missing the point of specific areas of the body. We talk about the core, the diaphragm, the pelvic floor, those muscles down there really function off proper breathing. So if we want to do these exercises properly, we don't just do the exercise, we focus on the underlying function of that area, which is we need to breathe first and then perform that exercise second. So this drill here is a simple breathing drill, just hook, line breathing, laying on my back. I'm trying to focus on initially getting that rib cage to move down, right? Exhale, getting that rib cage to relax down. We don't want it to be open in this flared position. We want it to relax down so we can get that rib cage on top of the pelvis. This is kind of our neutral position that we're trying to set. We're not doing a pelvic tilt. We're focusing on rib cage down, trying to get that rib cage to come down, proper breathing into the diaphragm. Once we do that, we take a couple breaths, nice long exhale. You can see it's a slow exhale, which allows me to really take the time to get the rib cage down. Our next thing is rib cage down first, create that canister. So now, like I said before, we want rib cage on top of pelvis, rib cage comes down, core lightly engages. Those abdominals in the front help the rib cage. If I'm engaging the abdominals lightly, not bearing down too much, it allows me to stay in that position as opposed to opening up and flaring my rib cage again. So this keeps that canister formation from pelvis, abdominals, rib cage, spine. Here I'm just monitoring, where's my breathing coming from? Am I continuing to breathe and really inflate through the chest, or am I getting equal chest and diaphragmatic breath as that belly rises? So now that I have that position, my next step is to, again, exhale, rib cage down, engage the abdominals lightly, right? First two steps. I breathe and see, can I expand 360 degrees around the core? My fingers are at the front of that abdominal wall, seeing as I inhale, as my belly pushing out into the breath. I'm going to push my hands, my fingertips between the pelvis and the rib cage directly on the side. As I breathe and inhale, am I expanding and pushing away? A lot of times, and what's common nowadays, is people are focusing only on belly breathing. Breathing should happen all the way around the body, ribs, abdominal wall, all that stuff is meant to expand in all ways. Once I get that down, now I add a stability component in here. So now it's just starting to look like core training for a lot of people, right? This is starting to look like dead bugs. It's starting to look at other core exercises, but breathing is the foundation of that. So exhale, rib cage down, abs lightly engaged, expanding into the abdominal wall. And then obviously with my legs lifted in the air, my core has to stabilize my pelvis, my lower back, to prevent myself from going into an arch position. I could add marching legs. I could add opposite arm, opposite leg. I can add a lot of different components into this to turn this into a good core exercise. But that's a very simple drill that works on breathing progression. And I'll obviously send you the replay of this, something for you to work on, something you think about while you're sitting at your desk or you're driving in your car, right? Proper breathing should be the foundation of all of this. Now, as we connect the dots together, right, most people, like I said, most runners are training the core this way. And now I'm not saying these are bad exercises, because I truly don't believe there's such thing as a bad exercise. Every exercise has to be matched to the individual based on the goals, their injury history, and what they need. Obviously, what they enjoy to a degree, because we want you to continue to exercise and strength training, core train for years to come. So I sometimes I ask people what's their favorite. And even though it might not be the best exercise for them, I like to try to still have that in the program to some degree. So we're not just disrupting the things that they actually enjoy here as we change some exercises up. But trying to get away from some of these flexion, rotation type exercises like this. These are more core strengthening exercises that work on strengthening the bigger global muscles around the core. We really want to work on stability, controlling the core, creating that canister, breathing, and then putting that into single leg positions. So what I would like you to do, and you're going to look at these and think, that's not a core exercise, right? These are not traditional core exercises in any way. And that's the beauty of it when it comes to running. Most people are not doing these things. Most people are rolling around on the ground, doing crunches, doing Supermans. By all means, again, I love the dead bug, love the front plank, love the side plank, love single leg side planks, love hip bridges and all those. Those are really foundational things that I also have within the program. But those are simple things that I think a lot of people know. So I wanted to make sure I didn't really talk too much on the staple exercises. These are the things that I think if you add these in, no one else is doing them. This will really help take performance and more injury resilience to the next level. So top left here, we have what's called standing hip abduction. Now you'll see why the hip, the core, the pelvis, all of these areas need to work together. I'm on the weight. I'm trying to make sure, as I pause this for a second, good single leg alignment, knees not being tugged in from the band, pelvis remains level, rib cage down, expanding into that abdominal area. All of those things are happening at the same time. One thing I might recommend is get out of the shoes, right? There's an old video before I became more strict on people taking their shoes off, but I would take those shoes off for to connect the foot with the ground so we can get some of those things we talked about earlier. Now from here, we're working on single leg stabilization, core stabilization, pelvic control, foot stability, right? All of those things are really working for us to create good stability of the kinetic chain. Next one here, if you look at the bottom, this is me over in Michigan here, overhead step up. So with the arms raised overhead, one of our tendencies is to arch the back. So with proper breathing, right, like I talked about earlier, rib cage comes down. We're not overextended into the spine. We're setting up a good rib cage spine pelvic position, and then we're performing a single leg exercise. So I have to really fight against that extension that my arms are trying to create. I'm engaging the core, I'm stabilizing the hip, the pelvis, and the foot, and then I'm going through a step up. Step ups are probably hands down one of the best exercises for runners. This is kind of a progression of when we do regular weighted step ups, overhead step ups, lateral step ups, crossover step ups. There's a lot of good progressions you can add in there to really spice things up and keep things interesting. And just a buddy of mine was down in Nashville, Chris Wolf, who did a lot of running videos, running analysis, and different seminars together at the time. Standing airplane. So biggest thing about this is we're getting that foot stability, we're getting that alignment, so that knees never collapsing in. He's rotating around the hip joint, so getting that hip strength and hip stability. But look at his pelvis, his rib cage, and his shoulders. Look at his trunk. Everything is moving together as a unit. There's no disconnect of shoulders going this way, but hips are staying that way. Everything is moving together perfectly. So we're creating this core stability. We're moving around the hip joint to train some of those stabilizers and some of those hip muscles. And we're really working on single leg stabilization of the entire kinetic chain. Very challenging exercise. If you have a second or have some room right now, I think try that out. I have people even that do this on a regular basis. Some days you'll do this great. Other days you'll feel like a fish out of water and you can't complete one repetition. It's a hard exercise, but it really makes you focus on getting everything to work together. Core stabilization, hip strength, and then stability of that single leg. Last one here, one of my favorites, 2 dumbbell marching. So now adding a little bit more resistance. I like to try to load runners up a little bit in terms of weight. With 2 to 6 times body weight coming down on the single leg, we need to really expose the body and add some weight on the kinetic chain. So very simple. I'm having or holding a pair of heavy dumbbells. I'm just slowly marching down and back. Those dumbbells provide a little weight, a little sway side to side. I'm just trying to lock in my body, rib cage down, cores engaged, breathing through the midsection. And then I have that single leg component as well. So all of these exercises are good options when it comes to really progressing or stepping up your core training program. You need to still focus on those other things though. We need to focus on the foot. Do we have big toe range of motion? Do we have dexterity in the foot? Do we have strength there? Are we breathing properly? Are we stabilizing the leg? Are we doing all of these things while engaging and stabilizing through the core? All that stuff needs to happen at the same time. When you do traditional sit-ups, right, we're just isolating muscle, we're isolating abdominals. It's good to have strong abdominals, but from a running standpoint, right, there's a small amount of rotation, but our rib cage is sitting on top of our pelvis. We're not having to throw a baseball and really come down into that position. We don't need too much strength and power around the core. We want stabilization and control. That's how we transfer energy. That's how we land and dissipate force. That's how we run as efficiently as possible. So as we start to wrap up here, and welcome to add any questions, any feedback in. What we covered today in the webinar, demands of running on the kinetic chain, right? We want to absorb force. We want to transfer energy. We want to centrate the rib cage on top of the pelvis. We want all those things to happen at the same time as we run to run efficiently. How to address the core with a wider lens. A lot of times, again, people looking for ground-based core exercises, which are good to a degree, but getting yourself upright, understanding that there's more to the core than just abdominals, right? We have all those smaller muscles that stabilize the spine, pelvic floor, hip muscles, piriformis, psoas, all of those as well. And then specific exercise that will make you a better runner. These things are getting you up on a single leg. So as we talk about triathlon and Kona and low back pain, and all of these things, this helps put all the pieces together. We don't want to be strong in individual segments. We want to be strong as a unit and stable as a unit, right? It's a very whole body, multi-joint activity running. So we need to make sure we're just not focusing on things solely in isolation. We can have that in bits and pieces within the program, but we want to put it together in a nice cohesive way where we're functioning as a whole. And that's where we can really improve performance and reduce the likelihood of injury. So question for you guys as we start to wrap up here. Based on everything I showed you today, do you see 1 to 2 simple areas you can improve right now within your routine? Hopefully you had that pen and paper. You wrote down a couple notes there as you went in. What were those 1 to 2 simple things you feel like you can improve? Are you doing the exercises I showed you? Hopefully some of you are. If you aren't, and which ones can you add? Or the other things that do you feel like you're neglecting? Are you doing things too much in isolation? Give me some feedback here. Drop a quick line in the Q&A. Let me know if there's anything, right? Anything you feel like from the webinar today you can improve. Hopefully you'll take something with you. And I hope you can incorporate some of those things tomorrow. So I got a couple coming in here. Let me click. So far, was doing things very isolated, right? Russian twists, Supermans. Now we'll add more, again, multi-joint core exercises. That's awesome. Again, we don't need to do so many exercises either. 2 to 3 core exercises multiple times a week, right? We don't need to make this too complicated. A lot of times I see the biggest benefit with my people, and obviously this is what I do, so I'm not trying to push you in that direction there, but when you evaluate the body and you see what the weak links are where people are struggling, you can input specific exercises that address that. A lot of times in a general way, if you're just core training, we're just doing core exercises, hoping those core exercises are the ones that we need. And that's true for all things in life, right? It's hard to self-assess yourself, but to get a really good assessment, evaluation, running analysis, and getting specific on that can be really beneficial. Learned again the impact of single leg stability on core. I think that's really important. Rather than thinking about the core of just this area, we're so interconnected throughout the body, fascial lines, muscles, the different chains that go through the body. Making sure you are addressing multiple things. I don't want you just to do core training, right? I don't want you just to train the core and that's it. I want you to put that into some type of functional movement, put it into the step up, put it into the march, put it into those bigger functional movements, which will really carry over to better running performance. So at this point, this is kind of you right now. We have this maze of kind of trying to take in all the information I threw at you today, which is quite a bit in a short period of time, figure out, digest that information, figure out which direction you need to go as you move forward. I know after all webinars that I go to, I get to the point of either I understand exactly what I need to do, or I'm so confused I do nothing, right? And that's, I know over the years I have, in certain areas, there's some areas which I have not acted and I'm still struggling with, other areas where I've hired a coach, I hire people to fix my house, and the plumbing issues that we're having down there with the washing machine and living, like certain times I actually reach out and ask for help. And those are the times where, yes, it costs me some money, but I get there as quickly as possible. So you have a choice at this point, can continue on 100%, incorporate some of these things in your routine, see how they help you, tinker with it, start to mess around with different exercises. Hopefully it brings you and puts you in a better place in months from now. It usually takes a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks to see the benefit from adding some of these exercises. So be patient with it. If you need help specifically, if you want to do an evaluation, you want to look at these things, you want to get more specific within your program without wasting time trying and being unsure or uncertain, happy to help you. Like I said before, I run what's called the Healthy Running Program. Whether it's you're an injured runner, you're preparing for Kona, lower back pain, just want to improve running performance, just want to get stronger and feel better and more confident in yourself, the Healthy Running Program can definitely help that. So my big 3 outcomes when I work with people and we try to optimize core training, running performance, strength training, all of that. First and foremost, we're trying to create alignment, right? I want to understand where you are right now. What are your goals, where you're trying to get to, and how do we get you there the safest and most effective way possible? And obviously as quickly as possible too, without obviously pushing you too fast. Alignment is one thing a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people have goals. They're uncertain of what they need at the time and the path to get there. It turns to be this squiggly line of, I get injured, I trained too hard, I did really well, I was set back, I went on vacation, right? We kind of travel in this irregular path as we work towards our goals. So my goal is to help really fast track you and put you in direct alignment with those goals. And I want you truly to get more with less. I hate when people waste their time. I've been in a lot of facilities, different group training programs and those things where a lot of people are exercising just to exercise. I think that's good from a health standpoint, but if we're talking about running, we're talking about running more efficiently, we're talking about running faster, seeing better results within the race, overcoming some type of injury in the process. We need to make sure we're training in a smart way that's also effective. So if I can give you 4 exercises as opposed to 10 that actually deliver results, and I want to give you as little as possible. One of my favorite principles is the minimum effective dose principle. So if you have a headache and you take 1 Advil and that Advil gets rid of your headache, why take 2, right? That's not necessary. That carries with it added risk. It's really not necessary because you can get the same results on 1. That's what I want to get for people when it comes to some of their training programs, is getting more results with actually less effort. So you can spend your time training, running, triathlon, whatever else you're doing. Because in the end, we want to maximize performance, reduce the risk of injury. We want to run on a regular basis, running consistently, running for months, running for years without injuries, without setbacks. That's what creates the big improvements from a performance standpoint. So if you're interested in the healthy running program that I talked about, I'm actually going to raffle off that one free month here in a second. So this is kind of what you'll get within that one free month. Goal setting consultation, review of injury history, review of the running plan, your current routine, just so I can understand exactly what are you doing right now and where are you trying to get to so we can help improve that alignment. Complete a movement assessment. So I want to see how you move. What does your strength look like? What is your mobility? Any imbalances, differences in range of motion from side to side? Are there certain things we need to address within your program just to make you move in a more efficient manner? And then help you design a core training, strength training, injury prevention routine. With that being said, and like I said earlier, this can be really dialed into what you need within your week. I have some people that do one single day a week. I have some people that do a handful of exercises as their dynamic warm up, and we sprinkle it throughout the week. Some people go to the gym 3 to 4 days a week, right? It doesn't have to be any specific way. It only has to be laid out in a way that actually works for you, your schedule, and you can stay consistent with first and foremost. Also going to add a slow motion running analysis, right? Understand how you're running. I think that's important when it comes to a lot of this stuff. In addition, just looking at the body and doing an evaluation, looking at your running and really piecing those things together. We want to make sure everything is working together to help you deliver results or create results. So the running analysis piece of it is important to see. And there's a couple simple tweaks we can make to run in a more efficient manner. How do we correct or improve running form, right? If you're out there running countless miles, every week, every month, and we want to make sure you're doing it in the most efficient way possible, and then also help really laying out a good custom running plan. A lot of people are following general plans these days, aren't working with the coach, and making sure you're running the right miles, you're adding in the right speed work, you're progressing in the right way over time to do things safely, but also kind of get to that end goal as much as possible. And then again, if you need additional check-in calls, anything else outside of kind of what we're doing together, we can upgrade to in-person sessions if you need that in-person attention. If you want to do strength training together, if you want to get on the treadmill and work together for a running form correction session, all that stuff is possible as well. That can be added on there. All of this I lay out for people within a coaching app. So it's very simple. Every single day, usually you don't have something every single day. I go into the coaching app, videos, explanations, sets and repetitions, ability to talk and get feedback, go back and forth with me, review form, like all that stuff is very fluid. Like I talk to almost all of my clients most days of the week, give feedback on their runs, talk about their pacing, talk about their heart rate, see how they felt, any joint pain, any aches and pains, what do you want to change? And we just continue to fine tune that process. With everything that I do, there's always that 100% money back guarantee. If you feel like you're not getting results, if it's not what you're looking for, again, this is not the place for you. We'll help find that best person for you. I don't push people into anything. I don't try to steal their money in any way, just trying to help people as much as possible. And luckily, this program has been pretty effective there. The reason why, and I think over the years, what I try to do with this program, the more I look at running and the amount of money runners spend on stuff, right? You spend endless money on shoes, Garmin's, nutrition, foam rollers and soft tissue recovery, R8 foam roller, regular foam roller, all these different gadgets and gizmos and socks and all of that stuff, physical therapy, imaging, doctor's appointments, all that stuff. This stuff adds up, right? And I think a lot of times people are not spending as much money as they need to on their body from a more preventative standpoint. So the strength training, the injury prevention, the correcting running form, even just occasional visits to make sure you're doing the right things to stay healthy, I think goes a long way and offsets the time that you need to be spending in doctor's office, physical therapy. We're trying to stay out of that as much as possible. We're going to avoid the medical system at all costs. And we can go down that road, right? I am licensed athletic trainer, healthcare provider. We do manual therapy, we do rehab and all that. If I could put you through a strength training session as opposed to get you on the table and have to work on something from a soft tissue standpoint, I would do that every day of the week if possible. So I wanted to create something that was cost effective, right? That we can get a lot of runners the help they need, but also create the results to see good long-term success. So for you guys on the webinar today, and if you don't win the raffle, which we'll add names in here in a second, and since I'm new to the area, I actually created a pretty big discount on that. $399.99. It includes all of those things: the running analysis, the strength training, the evaluations, the running plan, all of that. I'm going to discount it to $199. I always do things on a very short-term basis just to see, hey, is anyone interested? If you are, let's get to work. If not, no hard feelings. but just gonna need to make sure I kind of continue to move forward and help people as much as possible. So if it's something you're interested in, you can let me know. I'm going to send you an email with the webinar replay. Let me know if you're interested. What I want to do right now, though, is actually enter names into the raffle. So click that Q&A button if you want to enter your name into winning that 1 month in the Healthy Running Program. It's everything that I mentioned there. It's 1 month of us working together. Whether you want to stay long-term or not, that's completely up to you. My goal is just to provide as much value as possible to help you. All I want you to do right now is if you open that Q&A box, you just type in there, I'm in. This is not saying you are going to win it, or you have to say yes once we talk about the details of the program. But if you want to enter your name into 1 month of the Healthy Running Program, this is just a free raffle, free month of coaching, running analysis, evaluation, strength training program, core training program. It can be anything. It can be, again, extensive. It can be simple. I have some people that they do based on their needs. They do 15 minutes. I have some people that do a few hours. I have some people that only want to come from running analysis and form correction, right? You don't need to do all of those things. We'll find out what you need from that. And that usually comes from a good evaluation. And then we'll really create that program based on what you need. So take a second, open the Q&A, write I'm in there. If you're interested in entering the raffle, hopefully you are the big winner of that raffle. I always wish I could just do it for free for everyone, to be honest with you. I know I enjoy it. I just do some educational stuff, do some webinars, and just help people. All right, so I'll get you guys in here. That sounds good. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to pull up. You guys are entered. I'm going to pull up a quick random number generator based on when you answered, when you kind of chimed in and what order. And what I'm going to do is pick someone right now so you know before we leave. So winner of the raffle, Tammy. Your name will be a little hard for me to pronounce, so I don't even want to pronounce it. T-A-M-I, you are the winner of the raffle, so congrats on winning that 1 month. Everyone else who entered, again, if you're interested in the 1 month of the Healthy Running Program at that discounted rate, I'll send that email tomorrow. Welcome to text me. I texted you guys a little while saying, get on here with the webinar, but I'll email you tomorrow the webinar replay. If you're interested in talking about that, you have questions, you can definitely let me know. Well, congratulations, Tammy, for winning that 1 free month. We'll talk about the details. I'll shoot you a message. We'll chat about that tomorrow, over the weekend, or sometime next week at your convenience. So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to hang out here for about 5 minutes or so. Any question from any of the content, anything different, I don't care. It doesn't have to be core training. It could be on running coaching. It could be on running plans. It could be on other types of strength training, specific injuries, running form. I don't care, right? Drop a line in the Q&A right now. Let's see if there's something quickly we can talk about that can give you guys some extra value. If you have nothing, you had a good, you enjoyed the webinar, I hope, and you want to jump off, I definitely appreciate you joining me on this Thursday evening. Hope you have a great night and great week. But if you want to hang out for a second, ask a few questions, I'm happy to hang out for a few minutes and answer. So we'll wait a couple seconds, see if anyone has anything to add in. Curious what, I know some of you guys have entered, kind of where you're from and what races you're doing. Curious if you guys have any races coming up here this fall as well. I know I just moved to planning on, I think there's something in the spring here. I saw something in April. It was in April, I think half or full. I'm going to run with my sister. She's going to come in from Boston. We'll probably run that together, so it should be fun. But nothing on the radar for me for this fall. Just some training, getting used to this area, getting back into a good, consistent routine now that we're moved. So if anyone knows any suggestions, feel free to shoot them out. I've been getting out with the dog at all. Just got a puppy. Getting out to Veterans Park, Lake Park, those kinds of areas, walking the dog and seeing a lot of people out there running along the lake shore and that. But if you know of any good spots, especially trails, I like to get out on the trails a lot. I'm not sure how many are close by here, downtown area where I am, but if you have any suggestions on anything, I would appreciate it. So no questions in here. So hopefully answered your questions as we got through the webinar today. I'm going to pop off here and kind of just relax for the rest of the night. But I really appreciate you guys jumping on. I'll follow up with the webinar replay tomorrow at 11 a.m. Feel free if you want to introduce yourself there, if you want to ask questions, email me, call me anytime. I think that's one big thing is, and I love talking about this stuff. This stuff is fun to me. It's interesting. Just want to help people. So if you don't want to sign up for anything, that's completely fine. I'm not going to push you to anything. I would help provide feedback and advice as much as possible. And if you have those questions, I'm here to answer them. So have a great rest of your night. Thanks everyone for joining for the webinar today. And I hopefully look forward to connecting with you some of you guys soon. Thank you.